I took my mom to see her favorite comedian and got absolutely destroyed in front of hundreds of people. So this literally just happened last night, and I'm still processing the emotional damage. I'm 25 years old, and my mom just turned 59. For her birthday, I decided to surprise her with tickets to see one of her all-time favorite comedians, someone pretty famous who's been around for decades. She was absolutely thrilled when I told her. Here's where things started going sideways. When we got to the venue, my mom spotted some empty seats right up front, like literally front row center. Her eyes lit up and she grabbed my arm, insisting we had to sit there. She told me she'd been going to comedy shows for years and had never once sat in the front row, and since it was her birthday, this was going to be her moment. I immediately felt my stomach drop. I've never been the type of person who wants to be in the spotlight. I actually deal with pretty severe social anxiety and have really struggled with self-esteem issues for most of my life. I'm actively working on it in therapy, but it's still a daily battle. The thought of sitting that close to the stage where I could potentially become part of the show made me want to turn around and walk right back out. I tried to convince her to sit literally anywhere else. I explained that I just wanted to relax and enjoy watching the show, not worry about becoming part of it. I told her that comedians are notorious for picking on people in the front row, and I really didn't want to risk getting roasted in front of hundreds of strangers. But she kept insisting it was her birthday wish, and how often do you really get the chance to sit that close to someone famous? Eventually, I caved. I figured maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe the comedian wouldn't even notice us. Maybe he'd focus on other people. I tried to convince myself it wouldn't be that bad, right? Wrong. So incredibly wrong. As soon as the show started, I could feel it coming. I did a quick scan of the audience during the opening act, and I realized something that made my anxiety spike even higher. Every single person in that theater was around my mom's age or older. The comedian himself is in his 60s, and his fan base clearly skews older. I was probably the only person under 40 in the entire venue. I stuck out like a sore thumb, and I just knew that he was going to say something to me. The show started off great. The comedian was hilarious, the crowd was loving it, and my mom was having the time of her life. I started to relax a tiny bit, thinking maybe I'd worried for nothing. Maybe he wouldn't interact with the audience that much. Maybe I'd get lucky. And then it happened. About halfway through his set, the comedian started doing crowd work. He began chatting with people in the front row, making jokes, asking questions, the usual stuff. He talked to the couple next to us, then the person on the other side, and then his eyes landed directly on me. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. He asked me how old I was, and I managed to squeak out that I was 25. Then he asked about my mom, and she cheerfully told him she just turned 59 and that I had brought her here for her birthday. What he said next is burned into my brain forever. He looked between the two of us, paused for comedic effect, and then said I must have been in some kind of fire or something because I looked way older than my mom. He really emphasized it too, like he was shocked by how much older I supposedly looked compared to her. The entire room erupted with laughter. I mean, absolutely erupted. People were howling. It was the biggest laugh he'd gotten all night. And the worst part? From where I was sitting, positioned below the stage and facing forward, basically nobody in the audience could actually see my face except for the comedian. So all these hundreds of people were laughing hysterically at a joke about my appearance, but they couldn't even see me to judge for themselves. They were just taking his word for it, that I looked ancient. I wanted to die. I wanted the floor to open up and swallow me whole. I couldn't disappear. I couldn't hide. I just had to sit there with this frozen smile on my face while waves of laughter crashed over me. The comedian moved on to talk to other people, but I couldn't hear anything anymore. My face was burning, my hands were shaking, and I felt like I couldn't breathe. The absolute worst part? As he continued his crowd work, he interacted with several other women throughout the audience, and every single one of them he made a point to call beautiful. He complimented their smiles, their energy, how young they looked. Every single one except me. I was the only woman he'd singled out to mock. I somehow made it through the rest of the show, but I wasn't really there anymore. I couldn't focus on any of the jokes. I just kept replaying that moment over and over in my head. The second the show ended and the lights came up, the tears started flowing, and I couldn't stop them. I was trying so hard to hold it together, but I was absolutely sobbing as we walked out to the parking lot. The entire drive home, my mom was in damage control mode. She kept trying to console me, telling me over and over that it was just a joke, that comedians say outrageous things for shock value, that he probably said it specifically because it was so obviously untrue. She told me I look young for my age, that I'm clearly very attractive, that nobody actually believed what he said. She reminded me that he's a professional comedian and his entire job is to say unexpected, shocking things to get laughs. Logically, I understand everything she's saying. I know that comedy shows involve roasting. I know that comedians exaggerate and lie for effect. I know that he was just trying to get a reaction. But emotionally, I can't shake it. This felt like every anxiety-fueled nightmare I've ever had about public humiliation coming true in the most vivid, horrifying way possible. The thing is, I already struggle so much with how I look. I pick apart my appearance constantly. I avoid mirrors. I hate having my picture taken. I compare myself to everyone around me and always come up short. And now, in front of hundreds of strangers, a professional comedian looked at me and decided that the funniest joke he could make was about how unusually terrible I must look to appear older than someone 34 years my senior. I keep telling myself it was just a joke. I keep trying to rationalize it, but I can't stop hearing the laughter. I can't stop seeing him look at me with that expression. And I can't stop wondering if he actually meant it, even a little bit. Or if everyone in that audience went home thinking about that poor girl who apparently looks like she's been through some kind of disaster. My mom feels absolutely terrible. She keeps apologizing, saying she never should have insisted on sitting up front, that she had no idea something like that would happen. But it's not her fault. She just wanted to have a special birthday experience. I'm the one who let my anxiety ruin what should have been a fun night for her. I just needed to get this out somewhere. I feel absolutely mortified, and I can't stop thinking about it. Has anyone else ever experienced something like this? How do you move past being publicly humiliated in front of hundreds of people? Because right now, I feel like I'm never leaving my house again.
Related comments. Honestly, this is exactly why I refuse to sit in the front 3 rows at comedy shows. I learned this lesson the hard way about 10 years ago when I went to see a pretty well-known comedian with my then girlfriend. We got there early and snagged front row seats, thinking we were so lucky. Within 15 minutes of the show starting, he zeroed in on me and spent a solid 5 minutes making jokes about my receding hairline. The entire audience was crying laughing, while I just sat there dying inside. My girlfriend thought it was hilarious and kept bringing it up for months afterward. We're not together anymore, partially because I could never forget how she laughed along with everyone else instead of having my back. The thing is, I know it's part of the show. I know comedians are supposed to roast front row people. But it still hurt like hell, and I genuinely didn't leave my apartment for a week afterward. Some of us just aren't built for that kind of public humiliation, and there's nothing wrong with that. Your mom should have listened when you said you didn't want to sit up front. Comment. I'm going to be the unpopular opinion here, but it's a comedy show. You sat in the front row. This is literally what happens at comedy shows. The comedian's job is to get laughs, and unfortunately, shock humor and roasting audience members is part of that. He doesn't actually think you look older than your mom. He said something outrageous specifically because it's obviously not true. That's the whole point. If you'd been sitting in the back, you could have just enjoyed the show. But you chose to sit front row at a comedy show, which is essentially volunteering to potentially be part of the act. I get that you have anxiety and self-esteem issues, but the comedian didn't know that. He just saw a young person in a sea of older folks and made a joke. You need to work on not taking everything so personally, especially in contexts where roasting is literally the expected norm. Comment. Wait, I need more info here. Who was the comedian? Because some comedians are known for being genuinely mean-spirited with their crowd work, while others are usually pretty lighthearted about it. Also, did he say anything else to you after that initial joke, or did he just drop that bomb and move on? Because if he came back to you and kept piling on, that's actually pretty messed up. Most good comedians know when to move on, and the fact that he called every other woman beautiful but singled you out for mockery is honestly really gross to me. Like, he could have literally made any other joke about you being the youngest person there, but he specifically chose to attack your appearance. That feels less like comedy and more like just being cruel. I'd actually consider writing to the venue or his management, not to get him in trouble or anything, but just to let them know that his crowd work crossed the line. You might not be the only person who's been hurt by his jokes.
Comment. Your mom sounds like she feels absolutely awful about this, and honestly, she should have respected your boundaries when you said you didn't want to sit up front. But I will say, as someone who's been performing stand-up for about 8 years now, small clubs, nothing fancy, what the comedian said almost definitely wasn't based on how you actually look. When we do crowd work, we're looking for anything that makes someone different from the rest of the crowd. Age, clothing, who they're with, literally anything. You were the youngest person there by decades, so you were an easy target. The fire joke was probably something he's used before in similar situations because it's absurd and gets a big reaction. It's shock value, pure and simple. I've said things on stage that I would never actually mean in real life because the goal is just to make people laugh. That being said, I always try to read the room, and if I can tell someone's genuinely upset, I usually circle back and make a self-deprecating joke or give them a compliment to smooth things over. The fact that he didn't do that, instead kept complimenting other women while ignoring you for the rest of the show, makes me think he either didn't realize how much he'd hurt you, or he's just not as skilled at reading his audience as he should be. Comment. This might sound weird, but I'm actually more bothered by your mom's reaction than the comedian's joke. Like, yes, what he said was hurtful, and I completely understand why you're upset. But your mom knew you had severe anxiety about sitting up front. You told her multiple times you didn't want to, and she pushed and pushed until you gave in because it's my birthday. That's manipulative, even if she didn't mean it that way. And now you're the one who had a panic attack and cried for hours while she got to enjoy her favorite comedian. She got what she wanted at your expense. The fact that she spent the whole car ride trying to convince you it wasn't that bad, instead of genuinely apologizing for ignoring your clearly stated boundaries, is a red flag to me. This is exactly the kind of thing that happens when parents don't respect their adult children's autonomy. You're 25 years old, not a child she can drag to the front row against your wishes. I think you need to have a serious conversation with her about how this isn't just about the joke, but about her not listening when you explicitly told her you weren't comfortable with something. Comment. I work in mental health, and I just want to say that your reaction is completely valid and understandable given your pre-existing anxiety and self-esteem struggles. Exposure therapy, which is basically what accidentally happened here, only works when it's controlled, gradual, and you have proper support and coping mechanisms in place. This was none of those things. This was a traumatic experience that reinforced your existing negative beliefs about yourself and how others perceive you. Please don't let anyone minimize what you're feeling right now. That said, I really hope you can talk through this experience with your therapist, because leaving it unprocessed could actually make your social anxiety worse in the long run. You might start avoiding even more situations out of fear that something like this could happen again. Your therapist can help you work through this in a way that doesn't let this one awful moment define how you see yourself or how you interact with the world. You deserved better than what happened, and I'm genuinely sorry you had to go through that. Write what you think about this situation. Also, if you like this video, give a thumbs up, subscribe, and turn on the bell to receive notifications about the latest videos. See you next time. Bye-bye.